Okay, now we're on to number 14. Caraway Seeds estimates its weighted average cost of capital to be 9.2% based on the fact that its after-tax cost of debt financing is 6%, okay, and its cost of equity is 10%. Let's get this straight. So its after-tax cost of debt, AD1 minus tax, is 6%, and cost of common stock, it said, was 10%. Okay, where the firm's capital structure weighs. Well, here it says just financed with debt and equity. There's no preferred stock. So we have W sub D for debt, and we have W sub CS or W sub S or C for the weight in common stock and the weight in debt. And we know from the balance sheet equation, there's no preferred stock here, so that's all of the financing. So we know from the balance sheet, debt plus equity must equal total assets. Therefore, the proportion financed by debt plus the proportion financed by stock must be equal to 1. If you want to see derivation, fine. Debt plus equity equals assets, right? Balance sheet equation. Combine both sides by assets, we have the debt ratio, debt over assets, plus equity over assets equals 1. Well, it turns out W sub D is debt over assets, and W sub CS is equity over assets. So that's where that comes from. Okay. So anyways, and that implies rearranging the equation slightly. We have W sub CS must equal therefore to 1 minus the debt ratio, W sub D. Equity over assets must be equal to 1 minus debt ratio. Right? So what I'm going to do is take this and substitute that into our equation for the weighted average cost of capital. Weighted average cost of capital, therefore, normally it's weight of debt times the cost of debt times 1 minus the tax rate plus the weight in common stock times the cost of common stock. That's coming from after tax. So substituting in from that equation there, we get W sub D, K sub D, 1 minus 2, plus 1 minus the debt ratio times the cost of common stock. Weighted average cost of capital is given in this case as 9.2%. So 9.2% is equal to W sub D times the after-tax cost of stock is already given at 6%. Plus 1 minus W sub D times the cost of equity is given as 10%. I'm putting a square bracket, but you know you're supposed to multiply before you add, right? But just to make sure I'm putting a square bracket around it. Solve for D. Let's see. Well, I'm going to take the percentage sign, so it's 6W. I'm going to stop writing D. Plus 10% minus 10W. And put the W's on one side. So we have 10 minus 9.2 on one side. That has to be equal to 10 minus 6W. So W equals 10 minus 9.2 divided by 10 minus 6. That's as a percent, so that's going to be, how much is that? 8 over 4, right? That's 0.0, or 0.8 rather, 0.8 over 4, so that's 8/40, or 1/5. So 20%. So the debt ratio is 20%. Do you see that? And that's what we're solving for, right? Well, so W, that's one of them. So the other, so if W sub D is 10%, this is 1 minus 0.2 equals 80%. So W sub CS is 80% and W sub D is 20%. That's our capital structure, 20% debt, 80% common stock. Okay. Let's do 15. Actually, 15 is too long, so let's go ahead and erase. And number 15, they're giving us a balance sheet. I'm sorry. Actually, they give you the income statement, and then they also give you the right-hand side of the balance sheet. Well, and they ask, first of all, what's the weighted average cost of capital? To get that, we need the weights. W sub D is going to be the total debt, which is given as 12.59 million. Divided by total assets, 31,475,000. So you look on the balance sheet to find the weights. It's the total debt divided by total assets for is W sub D, the weight in debt. It's just the debt ratio. But in this case, is 0.4. Let's take it at 0.4. And then weight in common stock is the total equity, which is on the balance sheet that would be 18,885,000 divided by total assets, 31,475,000. That's 0.6. Or you know what? Once we've got the debt ratio, we didn't need to do this calculation. We can just remember that since there's only stock, there's only debt and equity. If there's only two sources of financing, if there's only two sources of capital, then the weight in one is just one minus the weight of the other. They have to sum to one. The weights must sum up to one. So we could have just said 1 minus 0.4 is 0.6, but either way. So there's our weights, and so now we can hopefully calculate the weight. We have the information necessary. It says the common stock is selling for its book value, and the firm's bonds are selling at par. Managers estimate the market premium of 15% return on its common stock. The firm's bonds have a yield of 8%. So 8 plus 15. I'm sorry. It says the market requires a 15% return. I don't know why I thought I saw the word premium there. It's not there. I'm sorry. The managers estimate that the market requires a 15% return on common stock. So KCS is given as 15%. And for bonds, it says that the cost of bonds is 8%. That's pre-tax. That's the yield to maturity, it says, on bonds is 8%. I think we have enough information now to look at the weighted average cost of capital. As W sub D, 0.4, times the pre-tax cost of debt, 8%, times 1 minus the tax rate, we need the tax rate as well. And that's given as, what is the tax rate? 34%. It usually is. The top corporate tax rate is 35%, but you're taking out 1% for, well, anyway. 0.34. So here's the weight being 0.4. Component cost of debt, after-tax component cost of debt is 8 times 1 minus 0.34. Then we add the weight in common stock, 0.4, times 15%. Sorry, 0.6, not 4, times 15%. Sum these up to get the weighted average cost of capital, 11.1. So new project needs 11.1% return in order to not make the stock price go down, make the firm value stay the same or higher. B, if Crawford's stock price were to rise such that it sold at 1.5 times its book value. Now it just said that it was selling for its book value before. The book value was 1.0. Now they're saying it's going to 1.1. Okay, 1.1. That's interesting. Causing the cost of equity to fall to 13%. That's nice of them to give us that number. So the new cost of common stock is 13%. When you think about that mark-to-book thing for a second, what would the firm's cost of capital be, assuming the cost of debt and the tax rate do not change? Well, okay, the old market-to-book ratio on the common stock is 1.0, and the new market-to-book ratio is 1.5. So that, I mean, basically what I'm getting at, the weights are going to change. If the market-to-book value ratio changes, then that means you have more equity, doesn't it? The total equity on the balance sheet would go up. We're supposed to use market values, but would go up. So the equity now, the book value is staying the same. So that means, so if the market-to-book value ratio goes from 1.0 to 1.5, that means the value of equity went up by 50%, doesn't it? So if old equity, what was old equity? So common equity was at 18,885. So old equity is 18,880. I'm sorry, 18,885,000. So the new equity, and the market-to-book ratio was 1. The new equity would have to be 18,885 times 1.5. So the market value is the market-to-book value ratio times the equity value. So this will be times 1.0 when the market-to-book ratio was 1.0. Now it's times 1.5. So what's the new equity value? That's going to change the weights. If total asset stays the same, actually total asset doesn't stay the same. Total asset, debt's staying the same. Total debt's staying the same because it says the market value of debt doesn't change. It's only the market-to-book value ratio, in other words, which means that the value of stock went up. So here's the new value of stock. Debt is still what it was, 12,590. But total assets now changes. Total assets, which is total debt plus equity, is now 28,327.5 plus 12,590 for total assets of 40 million. 17. Of course, that will change weights. This is still 15. So WD is going to be, that didn't change, but the bottom, the total assets did change. So this new number is going to be divided by 40,917,5. going to change this to, what's the new weight, what's the new debt ratio going to be? This becomes 0.3077. Common stock, this whole number changes, right? It's a new equity value, which is 28,327. Divided by the new total asset value. That makes the weight in stock go up to 69.23%. Of course, just having already solved for the debt ratio, for the weight in debt, you can just take 1 minus this to get the weight in common stock. You didn't actually have to make this extra calculation if you didn't want to. Okay, so now we have the weights. Now we can redo our calculations, right? So the new weighted average cost of capital change. New weight of W sub D is 0.3077 times the cost of debt. That's still 8%. Times 1 minus the tax rate. And then we have new weight in stocks. That's 0.6923 times. And it says that the rate of return of the stock changed from 15% to 13%. So it's not the cost of new stock. This is the new cost of stock. Yikes. Okay. Anyway, in the narrative it says that we're that this, how's it put it? The stock price were to rise such that it sold at 1.5 times book value, causing the cost of equity to fall to 13%. So the cost of equity is now 13%. So plug that into your calculator, evaluate that expression, and you'll get a new cost of capital of 10.62%. So it went down. Did it have to go down? It could have gone either way, actually. I mean, if the cost of equity had stayed at 15%, then this number would be higher than 11.1, because the debt ratio is smaller and the cost of debt, after-tax cost of debt, is less than the cost of equity. So if the ratio of, if the debt ratio had gone down and the cost of equity had stayed the same, the weighted average cost of capital would have had to go up. That's not what happened here, though. The debt ratio did go down, but the cost of equity went down as well. And the effect of the case of CS, the cost of equity going down from 15 to 13%, outweighed the decrease in cost of capital from the increase in cost of capital from a decrease in the debt ratio. So that effect. But it could have gone either way, depending on what the new cost of equity was.